Okay, so atmosphere and mood. Atmosphere and mood is really, it can be understood by thinking of it in the more inspiration driven part of art. So art is there's a part of art that's all scientific. And then there's a part of art that's all inspiration, dreams, dreaming of someone throwing fire at you, dreaming of someone being a witch. I have no idea who would have that kind of dream, but there's weird people out there. I'm joking. Um, but there's two sections in art, two huge parts in the world of art. Sorry, I'm symmetry obsessed. There is the scientific, okay, and then there is the inspired. The scientific portion of art is simple color theory, the golden median, golden ratio for faces. Different. So this is different kinds of measurements. There's symmetry and balance, negative and positive space. There is the color wheel, and it goes on, but essentially these are the main sort of, and let me just throw in perspective and scale, form, and 3D. Okay, so all this stuff I've been teaching you. Color, the golden median, the golden ratio, measurement, symmetry, balance, negative and positive space, the color wheel and how to use the color wheel to your benefit, the perspective in a painting and how to establish perspective with architectural drawings. There's scale, there's form, and then there's the 3D quality of your painting. Did you establish the 3D quality? Did you paint the z-axis? Did you do all that you're supposed to be doing scientifically? This is all stuff that you learn. This is all stuff that you can memorize. This is all formulaic. This is all scientific. Okay? So check mark, you learned it all. It's all scientific. It's all basic math. And a lot of artists today, the professionals, freelance professionals, understand these rules very well. They've memorized these rules. These rules are their bread and butter. You guys remember Bill Nye the Science Guy? How he used to carry the periodical table with him in a watch, as a watch, and he would just ring it out. Well, essentially the backbone of science is the periodic table. This is the backbone of art. This is the periodic table of art. If you guys ever wanted anything to write on your wall so that you guys don't forget it, this is the stuff that you're supposed to be remembering. Color theory, golden median, all the way down to 3D. 3D painting or 3D sort of application. On the 3D, you don't just paint on 2 dimensions, you paint on the 3rd dimension as well. You anticipate and understand the 3rd dimension. So now we have the inspired part of art. Is everyone paying attention? So now we have the scientific. Scientific is basic stuff. Not all of us can learn these at the same time. Not all of these we know yet. Not all of these we understand, but they're there. They're scientific aspects of art that we have to understand. Why do we have to understand them? Well, it's because we're painting stuff that exists in real life. And stuff that exists in real life exists under these laws. There's a color theory followed by physics. There's simple stacking followed by gravity, created by gravity. There's mass and distribution of mass. There's volume. All of that stuff is in real life. That's all stuff that we have to understand when we paint stuff that comes from real life. Because we're pulling it out of real life and we're putting it, so there's a house out in real life over there somewhere. Okay? And now we have a canvas and we have an artist. And they want to paint. Okay? This, they're going to be taking their hand, pulling it out of real life and putting it on here. But how do you do that? Well, you do that through your brain. Your brain does that for you. And what you're really doing is you're transferring an image that you see through your eyes, which is this, throwing it back in your brain over here. And it travels through your arm, through the paintbrush, and onto the canvas. But as it does this, you have to understand these rules. You have to understand all of these rules. If you don't understand these rules, how the heck are you going to successfully pull this thing out of real life and put it into your canvas? How is that possible? Well, it's possible by understanding the rules and memorizing them and keeping yourself conscious of these rules all the time. Okay? Okay. Now, that's the scientific, and that's the last time I'm going to point to the scientific. Now, there's another side of art, another large side of art, another inexplicable side of art, arguably something that you have to be born with, but it's not how to be an artist. As someone who's professional of an artist, who's a very an amazing artist, doesn't necessarily have this. This is something that Salvador Dali had. This is something that Picasso had. This is something that Michelangelo had, in my opinion. I really stick to the classics very much. This is something that Caravaggio had. And all their drunkenness and all their madness, and call it demon-inspired, call it God-inspired, I don't care. They were inspired, period. They were inspired by something. Something was inspiring them. This part is where mood and atmosphere stem from. This is where we have that place in our brain that doesn't necessarily want to pull something out of life, but it does. But there's something else in the brain that attaches to that picture that's being pulled out of life, and as it transfers through your arm, attaches itself, and when you throw it onto the canvas, you find out that you've found something else in there, your brain too, that's attached itself to this image and has come out. So let me illustrate that to you. Inspiration is when you're sitting on your chair and you have your canvas in front of you, and at this point you feel like drawing. Okay, that looks more like I don't even know what that looks like. Okay, so you have your canvas and you have your easel and you as the artist are ready to draw. Okay, and you're ready and you have your palette and you're ready to go. When you're here and you have an image, let's say you have a photograph right here of a house, okay? When these eyes see this house, they understand all the scientific rules from before, okay? But these scientific rules explain to you how to reiterate that house through your arms, through your right arm, your left arm, your foot, whatever you're using. Okay? That looks like whatever. When your arm is in the process of moving this image back onto the canvas, so you can prove that you saw that image well, because that's what artists do, they see. Something else in your brain attaches itself to this image. So let's say that what you drew ended up being a house, but it was a house on fire, even though the image itself had no fire in it. This is what we can call it. We don't know what happens in our brains. Many people have tried to explain what happens in a brain. None of us really know that much about it. We know enough to say, okay, we know. But the rest we've said, oh yeah, that stuff doesn't exist. There's such thing as demon possession and all that crap. There's such thing as actual inspiration. It's just chemicals throwing through your brain and bringing stuff back from your youth or crap like that. But whatever it is, you have established mood. You have established atmosphere through some sort of inspiration that has encouraged you to attach the symbol of a burning house, or to attach this to fire to this house, even though the original reference image you used didn't have a fire in it. This is called inspiration. Whether it comes acutely, whether it comes chronically, is not the question. The question is, what is inspiration, and that the fact that inspiration leads to how a painting feels. So mood and atmosphere is how a painting feels. How it feels. Okay? Feeling of a painting. And that is what mood and atmosphere is. Now that just sums it up for you. That's just all I can explain for you. Whether you're an avid reader and you understand what I'm saying, because that part of your brain is constantly susceptible to analytics or analysis, or if you're someone who has absolutely no idea what I'm talking about, you have no idea of the sort of sociological application of the world around you and how it reiterates into a painting if you're an artist and all that crap. But we have seen, even through that one scientific experiment where they gave an artist acid, or I don't know what they gave him. They gave him some sort of really bad drug, and they told him to draw the same image over and over again. And then the more he reacted to the chemical, the weirder his image got, because something else was attaching itself in the brain, parts of the brain that were opening up. Something was attaching itself to that image as it was coming back out and onto the canvas. And the way it felt was different each time, and what we felt when we looked at the image after each time. I don't know who has that link. Can you guys please link that to me? Whoever linked it before, I think it was Shadow. But each time that I think every 30 minutes they made him draw it again, and each 30 minutes he got more and more drugged up. Each time that he painted an image, every 30 minutes, we felt the actual miasma of what it meant to react to that drug through the image. We felt the drug. We felt what that person was feeling, even though they couldn't speak. They could barely say anything. They couldn't speak any cohesive sentence to describe what they were saying. However, they were still capable of explaining what they were feeling, even though they didn't know they were doing it, through the way they were painting the man sitting on a chair. And so he had to paint that man sitting on a chair. And the less drugged up he got after an hour or 2 hours, the more realistic, the more balanced his painting looked. It looked like how it looked before he took the drug. So it looked like an actual person sitting on a chair. But somewhere in the middle, it looked like some sort of fungi. It looked some sort of like scribbly things, and you could barely tell where the profile of the person was. So essentially, when something attaches itself in that inspired sense, it's how it feels afterward. Now this is all the backdrop. This is what's behind the curtains. Now, some of you here are concerned with what's behind the curtain. Some of you aren't. Those who are, I feel, are more serious about their art, and those who aren't are not serious about their art. And I'll take that opinion to the grave, because there are those who really want to understand what they're doing, and there are those who just want to follow the basic rules. And there are those who want to be good at art that don't even give a crap about these rules. So how are you supposed to make yourself the best artist you can be if you're not giving a crap about these rules? And the first thing you have to do is understand this as an artist, and then this as an artist, and then this process here as an artist. And that's what the whole Picasso speech that I gave you guys, how Picasso perfected these and then jumped onto this life. And you don't get here in a day. You don't get here unless you take drugs. No, you get here when you have done a long enough time that you've built a sort of sensory like some sort of sensitivity to the way your brush feels if you brush it a certain way. And if you keep doing that sort of practice, you get something that looks entirely with a mood, something that looks like it has mood and atmosphere, is what I'm trying to say. Because what the artist has done is that they've decided that they want to break some rules and keep some rules, and they want to make their image always have that sort of angle to it. Lines are always too sharp. And so what happens when you look at his images, they look very sudden, and they look very unfinished, or they look very suddenly finished. And I know it's weird and ambiguous thing for me to explain. You probably have no idea what I'm talking about, but after 40 years or so, you will develop your style. And I'm saying 40 years, that's just the highest possible level. Like 40 years from now, you'll be the most amazing artist you can be if you keep it up. Some people do it in 20, some people do it in 10, some people have already gotten it by the time they're 30 and they started drawing only at 20. God knows how much people work on their art. But if you understand all of this as the backdrop of your process in creating mood in your paintings, then you will approach drawing stuff that has a relatable mood. And this is the backdrop of atmosphere and mood. The scientific basics of atmosphere and mood is to harmonize your colors. So if you think of the color wheel, let me just get a color wheel on here. The color wheel basically is one of the colors are one of the ways to harmonize a painting. Harmonizing means leading it towards a mood. Okay? So mood can be established by remembering your color wheel. And that's one of the ways to establish mood or our atmosphere. It's one of the scientific ways. And forget about all this mumbo jumbo if you don't want to. If you want the basic ABCs, Idiot's Guide, and how to create mood on your canvas, this is it. Using colors that are beside each other is color harmony. Using colors that are opposite to each other is also color harmony, but it's a different kind of color harmony. It depicts an actual opposition of chemical reactions on the canvas. So each color is a different chemical reaction. And so what you get is a sort of opposition. If you use green and red, they look good together. Why? Because they are opposite together. But if you use red, orange, and yellow, they also look good together because they're right beside each other. So this is one of the ways you create mood and atmosphere, through color. So harmonized or limited palette. Through a harmonized or limited. I can never spell palette right. I think that's it. I think that means the roof of your mouth. I'm not sure. Who gives a douche? I do. Okay, let me search it up. Palette. Sometimes they're actually called a skid. Give me a minute. Art palette. Oh, so it's palette. It's the French version. Okay, no wonder the French made it. Alright. So, yeah, Ben, it's palette. So limited or harmonized color palette, meaning the colors can be beside each other, or you only limit yourself to blue and gray to paint a piece. That way you get a picture that looks like it has mood. So let's find a picture that has a limited palette. Okay, so this is a picture that has a limited palette. Right here. The colors that you see here, you don't see orange, you don't see red, you see a very limey green, which could have been used as a different color. The sky. You see a very faded blue-purple. You see a bit of red on the shadows, but that's pretty much where all the red is. And you see a lot of transparency. And this leads us to the next part. Not only, in order to create mood, not only do you have to use a harmonized palette or limited palette, harmonized meaning either beside each other or limited meaning or in this section. Sometimes you can use opposites, but I'll get to that. He sort of has used opposites. He sort of used a limey blue-green, blue-green for the background. Not blue-green, yellow-green for the background in these areas, and he's used a blue in the foreground, which has created that nice sort of contrast, but that's a very muted yellow. You barely notice it. You notice mostly the blues, which is what they've tried to do. So they've limited their palette. But there's another way that this person here, this painter, has achieved a mood. What is this mood? This mood is cold, quiet, very serene, contemplative. That's a word. It's very, very still. It's a still piece. Why? Because nothing is immediately attaching itself to your eyes. Everything seems to be collected. The one thing that seems to be too dark is this tree, and this tree seems to be significant compared to the trees behind it. This tree seems to have a different design, a different tone altogether compared to the trees behind it. It seems to be smaller than the other trees behind it. Where all these other trees are barren and have lost their leaves, this tree has sort of remained in the winter, has maintained its beauty in the winter time. And then you sort of started thinking about it, and you think about, what are these tracks? Are these animal tracks? Are these rocks? And that's sort of what mood does to you. It makes you develop a story. It makes it story friendly. It's very, very collected. It's very finished. A mood and an atmosphere, it legitimizes or validates, let's say, the reality of the image, so that it actually feels like you're there and you can relate to it. Okay? But this artist has managed in another way to create this mood. And this other way to create it is through brush technique. So brush technique is one of the other ways you create, one of the other ways you create mood and atmosphere. Now, I want you all to answer with a yes or a no. Are these trees realistically drawn? Do they have realistic proportions? Yes or no? I'll zoom in. No. No, I'm a righty, but I've been practicing my left. No, it's not. It's not realistic. To the untrained eye, it probably looks realistic, because that's how you would draw the tree without thinking too much about measurement and three-dimensionality. But this is a unrealistic rendition of the formation of trees. Okay? How about the brushes actually used? So let me write something here. Okay. How about the brushes used, the brush strokes? Has he used very bristly brushes all around? Has he used very gritty brushes all around? Does it look like he pretty much used the same size brush to paint the whole thing, other than the background? It's a watercolor painting. No. He looked like he used a very basic brush to do this. How about his brush technique? Does he care so much that these lines are overlapping each other? No. You can see it looks like the tree is transparent, but that's fine. The transparency is part of the technique, which is a reflective sort of characteristic of using watercolors. So there's a transparency here used through the medium, which is watercolor, through his brush. So his brush strokes were very consistent. His medium was very consistent. So what did it create? What would be more calming to you? A brick wall or a glass wall with water running over it? And then you can hear the water. What is more calming to you as a person? A brick wall or water running over it? A very clear, almost half transparent glass wall. Maybe, yeah, glass with water. Why is that? Why do we have that tendency? I mean, ask yourself. There's some people who probably want a brick wall to be their calming unit. But why do we have such a reaction of calmness to transparency? Well, think about it the way art works. Art works through our eyes. Not even artists, just normal people, when they look at everything around them, not that artists are abnormal, when they look at everything around them, what they see is something very sudden. And if you go outside in the midday in traffic in downtown of your city, downtown Toronto, downtown New York, and the hottest day in June, you sort of feel overwhelmed with the amount of colors and the amount of opaqueness around you and the amount of brick walls around you and the cement jungle that they call it. It's a very disturbing, negative feeling you get from the city in mid-afternoon and hot day, and all the lights are out because there was a blackout or something. But how about in the middle of nowhere, and it's a gentle rain, and all you see is just a gentle transparent haze of all the colors around you. All the colors are sort of muted, not so sudden and opaque like in a city, but very muted colors. This to us, why is it so serene and calming? It's because we don't have to worry. Our brain doesn't have to worry about rendering all that information. It says, you know what, that's a tree, and I can see it barely through the rain, and I like that I can see it barely. I don't have to see all of that tree, and we're going back a step back towards Impressionism. I don't have to see all of that tree, but I get that tree, and that tree is sort of in this atmosphere, and it's saying something to me. So this transparency here, this tree isn't as opaque as this tree. In a city, if something is not as opaque, it doesn't matter. Who gives a crap about it? Drive over it. Is a puddle important in a city? No, it's actually shunned. You have to think of it in that sort of respect. But this transparent tree is just as important as this opaque tree. It builds to create this atmosphere. Now, if you want to add atmosphere in a city scene, if you're painting it, throw in a fog and you have atmosphere. Throw in a bluish, hazy fog, throw in a gray sky, and you have a beautiful looking city. And that's why people say, I love the city when it rains. Because everything is so mediated and calm and muted that it's not so sudden anymore. There's not all that information you have to process in your brain that you feel overwhelmed. So this is what you have to understand when you're painting something that has mood. You have to ask yourself, what kind of brush technique am I going to be using to establish this level of transparency? How am I going to create that same serene feeling I get when I look at water through glass? And how am I going to let the person feel exactly what I'm feeling when I look at this? So that's another step towards mood. Your technique. Your technique can't be opaque. You can't just dip your brush in a bunch of watercolor. The watercolor nib thing, not nib, like the little cup thing with all the water based in it, that dry stuff, and just throw it straight into your canvas. No, the rule of watercolor is that you always have to throw in water. You can't just take it straight out of the palette and throw it onto the canvas. You always have to mute the color a little bit, build it bit by bit until you can have a level of transparency that you can manage. Okay? So that's one way. If your mood is exactly opposite to this and you want to create a city scene, let's get a nice city heat wave. Let's try to find one. Okay, there's this one, but I'll find another one. So this came up in Heatwave, which I liked. I really like this photograph. Let's find another one. Okay, there's one right there. Okay. Do these look calm and serene to you? Do these look as calm and serene as, let's find a realistic misty countryside. These are all photographs, these aren't paintings. I'll show you how this actually exists in real life. Do these look calm and serene? These ones over here? Just simply, just out of your own understanding of it. Do these look calm and serene to you? It doesn't. But why? Ask yourself, of course, we know what's calm and serene to you, but why but why is it not calm and serene? Why is it disturbing? Well, some things are happening in here that this one is more calm than this one, actually. This one is less calm. Why is this one so incredibly disturbing in that sort of calmness, mood, atmosphere thing? Does this even have an atmosphere? It has. This is why we say negative. Okay, so you have positive 100% mood, This is where these kinds of things fall. These kinds of paintings. You have trees, calm mist, and this is everything. Then you have the negative. Then you have zero calmness, and then you have something that looks like sort of 2 grades above this in calmness. And then you have something like this, which is negative. It has an atmosphere, but it's a negative calm atmosphere. You can't really call it busy. You can't really, busy means lack of silence. You call it dirty. Dirty means lack of clean. You call it, I don't know what else. It's a million things you can say about it. You can call it hard, which means lack of soft. So everything here is metallic. You can call it mechanical, which is lack of nature. And this has an excess of nature, and this has an excess or a negative of nature, an excess of mechanics. So you're working with opposites here. So what you're really dealing with in this kind of painting is you're trying to, first you have to understand the rules, and then you have to break them. You have to understand that in order to make something look like this, you have to first understand how to make something that looks like this. So you can't only paint mechanical stuff. At one point in your life, you have to start picking up a pencil, you have to go outside, and you have to look at a tree and start drawing that tree. Because you have to build that balance in you so that you know what to do when you draw a tree. And how not to add in a sort of gun application to the side of that tree and add in a Bluetooth or whatever. You have to understand that there's a limit, and you have to understand how to paint natural looking subjects in order to paint something that looks completely unnatural, completely destructive. And that's why artists are so prone to here, because this is where the positive energy is, and this is where the negative energy is in your brain. You don't feel comfortable here. Would you be able to sleep here? Pull up a tent and sleep? Not only would you be hit by a car, but someone will probably yell at you, and there's probably no space at all, period. But over here, you're probably able to throw up a tent and sleep. Not just because there's space, but because you actually can. There's not a lot of movement around, the stillness. And that's another thing that you can throw in to create calmness, is that there is not a lot of movement in nature. The only thing that moves is the trees, and trees are like the beauty queens of nature. Trees are like, trees and bushes and flowers. They're the beauty queens of nature portraits. They're like the Marilyn Monroe of the nature world. Not that I give a shit about her, but over here you have absolutely no tree at all. Do you see a tree? Does anybody see a tree? There's no tree at all. You see signs, you see directions, you see movement. This sign is saying go this way. This sign is saying go this way. This sign is saying go this way. There's another sign saying go this way. All the cars are going in this direction. The what's it called? The buildings are going in this direction. Then you have pictures that are going in every which direction to get everyone to look at it. And then you have signs going horizontally and vertically. This is what happens in a city scene, which is a negative amount of calmness. This is a positive amount of calmness. There's not a lot of movement. So what have we learned so far? Transparency, movement, negative and positive energies of calmness, looking through a brick wall. What can you see through a brick wall? And what can you see through a glass with water running over it, or water itself, period. That's how you create atmosphere, by understanding these very, very important rules. Okay? Does everyone have any questions? Does anyone have any questions so far before I jump into realism? Ivan, are you here right now? You messaged me on Skype, but are you here currently? Will you show us how to actually draw a mood? Yes, I'll be getting to that in a second. Mattia thinks moving water isn't calming, but Mattia likes to argue. Let's say the majority of people in the world think that water isn't calming, but of course a tsunami isn't going to calm anybody. It's just going to kill you. So you have to understand that there's a mediation in everything, and too much of anything is bad. Too much of hot is bad. So that's why we're saying that, you know, we're up some sort of up here in 100 degrees of calmness. If you get too much calmness, then you just get a blank image. And then that's just white hot, if you know what I mean. And then if it's negative, you get too much of this, you're going to get something that looks very busy, you're going to get black because of all the colors overlapping each other. So too much calmness is white, too much busyness is black, and then you're just getting either too cold or too hot. And you have to understand that there's a mediation of both of those. You should probably come to class, Ivan. So I will talk about how to make mood look good, okay? So it depends on how fast it is moving. I just wanna ask about creating atmosphere in close-up scale. What do you mean close-up scale? Like talking about scale and close-up camera? I meant like pouring water or anything. Only vast rivers or seas are calming, or lakes, of course. What about small creeks? No. I think Gavitia has a very haunting memory about his youth. Okay, I just use water as an example. I'm sure all of you feel calm when you look at trees, unless you watched a tree horror movie where a tree eats a man. I don't know. Everything has a calming state to it. I just mean that nature has a calming state, and it sort of leads back to that civilized but damned and natural but ignorant argument in literature. Sorry. Does anyone have the link to the stream? Because if I go on it, I'll just... I'll get it. Just to someone who wants to come to class. Okay, thank you. None of you seem to have asked any questions about the process. So let me go into realism level. Realism level can be used to help to assist both mood levels here. Both mood types. Extremely busy and extremely, this is sort of on the side when you add in a person. Let's just think of no people at this point. Realism level can be excessive. If it's excessive, it looks too real. But if it's excessive, it can also assist in the mood of something. So it can immerse you more. So realism level helps to immerse. It's sort of the carrier plane. It's sort of the highway that can get you deeper into a country or not. Okay, so realism, this doesn't have realism, but it has mood. But if it had more realism, it would help the viewer understand this image more, relate to this image more, say, oh, I want to go there. I want to actually go there. Not only is it not a painting, it's a photograph, but it's actually, those colors actually happen in real life. I want to be a part of that mood. This is what I feel. It's a good photograph. Okay, which is why photography is still a crazy art form, because if you know how to take a photograph, you'll know how to move someone. But how about the realism here? This realism caused even more chaos. So this realism didn't help us. If this was a cartoon, maybe we'd take it a little less seriously. And there are cartoons who have managed with a degree of realism, like Metropolis, if you guys have seen that, to create the feeling of an overdose of mechanics, an overdose of technology. But the realism here, in this picture, has also assisted the viewer in saying that the viewer to feel that it's time to sort of change the mood and actually look at something that's real and see that there are real calm things in the world, that there's not necessarily an overdose of technology everywhere you go. That's mood. How about when you have people? Adding people in your painting is another way to get mood. Let me just get a whole new thing. So when you have people in your painting, someone that is bothered by the heat wave. Oops. Or or someone that is in a completely different world, also equally hot place. But you have another human subject in there to create mood. Human subjects are very difficult to play with if you're a painter. It becomes very, very tricky. I'm going to show a picture that might disturb some of you, but it's also of a child in an image. Completely grayscale. But when humans come into the Game of Thrones, no, sorry, Game of Mood, what we get is the person and everything they're wearing and everything they're doing and in the directions they're looking and the emotions they're expressing. Not you don't need an inanimate tree or an inanimate car to tell you how to feel anymore. You have an actual person telling you how to feel now. What do you feel when you look at this? This is the same landscape in here, just in a different part of the world. Same landscape, same idea, same rice field, same farmland. But this is after the Hiroshima bomb. And everyone knows about this painting, the girl who ran and her skin was entirely flaked off. And this is her like a half an hour after she got burned. Yeah, Super, you're bad. And then you have someone of the same heritage, green background, super saturation, calm, curious. What do you feel? You feel overwhelming need to adore her. You feel adorableness. But what do you feel when you look at this man? He's no longer young. So these children are here, but both expressing youth. One destroyed youth. That's the main mood I get. Whoops. Destroyed youth. One here, thriving youth. And over here, you have old age, suffering, degree of suffering, come on, give it a break, it's just a heat wave, and discomfort. Okay? This taxes on us because it's a complete negative 100 of the positive mood scale. Positive mood meaning here, negative mood meaning here. You get a shock, you get an immediate discomfort. Not only is she incredibly in pain, but she's naked. She doesn't even, compared to the other kids, that's why what I asked when I first saw this image. I said, why is she naked? Why doesn't she have any clothes on? Shouldn't someone have thrown like a bunch of healing gel on her from all the burns? And I realized at that point, the story kept moving in my head. The realism kept pushing my brain, and I realized her clothes burned off. Is my closest sort of plausible explanation for this person here. This person is showing an equal amount of distress. These children are running. All children, and all you see in the background are clothed, armored men, where the children should have been clothed and armored. Over here you see a perfectly clothed girl. Complete saturation. You can see the skin in her, and you can see the flesh and the blood in her flesh. You can see happiness. You can see curiosity. You can see contentedness, content with life. You see health and food and a thriving future. You see a future for this child, but you see this child as no future at all, not only because they come from a past where pictures can only have been grayscale, but you see complete destroyed youth. She probably has radiation going all through her body. She probably didn't make it till 16. And here you have old age. You have comfort to a degree. Look at the chairs. But then you have the heat wave and the discomforts of old age. And then you have the city, and you have the cityscape. And then you have a little bit of trees here. So you see this man who seems to be overwhelmed by the city. This man wants to escape the city, and this man seems to not even be part of the city at all. He seems to be so comfortable smiling. He's got the trees behind him, and this guy's got the cement behind him. And this is sort of a clash of moods. And humans can make or break your painting. Humans are extremely painful to work with because you have to know what kind of human you're painting, what kind of image they're sending out. And how do you create image through humans? Well, you have to think about a whole bunch of units. Think of it like a stage, and then you have the set on the stage. I forgot what the term is that. I learned it in theater class. It's a French word which means the props and stuff. I forget what the word is. But think of the painting like a stage, and you see the human in it. And the human inside is not even a mise en stage. No. Mise en scène. Mise en scène. Yeah. Mise en scène. Yeah. So think of it like the mise en scène, okay? The clothes they're wearing. So this looks like a grave, but the same thing. Stage. The props on it, so clothing. Accessories. What are they wearing? What are they not wearing? Negative and positive. Think about their race. This person here is if this was no racism intended, I mean, come on, this is reality. If this was a white man on a chair, I'd read this picture very differently. If it was a white man on this chair and a black man on this chair, I'd read it very differently, even more, because the white man is comfortable. If it was a black man who was comfortable and the white man on the chair, then there's an whole other story. So the race plays another thing. If you're painting a human, it plays another role in the motion or the atmosphere of a painting. How about expression? Now that's a big one. Whoa. Expression and emotion. This is why we have portrait work, because sometimes all you need is the expression of a person and you're done. You have all the mood you need. This is why we have art called portrait art. This is why I spent so long teaching you guys how to paint noses and mouths. Because if you can paint a face, as I used to say, you can paint anything. Because if you can paint a face, you can finish a canvas. And as long as you fill a canvas, and as long as you can fill a canvas, you can do anything in the world. I'm telling you, it's the most difficult thing to do is to finish a painting. And God, thank God we actually do finish paintings that we start. So expression and emotion in a person does everything. Imagine this person here. Imagine this little girl. Wasn't with that face. Imagine she had her face. What would happen to the image? Would the image have moved us so much? She would have still looked distressed. But would the horror have been the same? Would the horror have been the same? How about if she had his face? The horror would have been excessive. Do you see the change in mood? It seems like she just lost her clothes, fell in the muck, and started running away. But when she has this face on, we know she's been hit by the atom bomb. We know she's been burned. We know that something has happened to her flesh. Something has happened to her skin because she is refusing to let her skin meet in contact with each other. If she touches here, she'll probably feel a severe stinging. And that's what our brains do. And why do artists have a reputation of killing themselves? Why do artists have a reputation of smoking excessively and drinking excessively? Well, it's because we feel on an extremely, extremely sensitive level. Because we're so incredibly sensitive to how much happens with a portrait, how much happens with an expression or an emotion. That's why everything else is bothering us. Because when someone says to you, okay, let's say you're a girl choosing out her wedding dress, and one of your friends says, okay, let me find another example. Not everyone can relate to that. Let's say that you are in class and a fireman came to give a speech about what happened to him in 9/11. This is 3 years after 9/11, and you're a girl in class wearing a hijab, and all of a sudden, even the friends that you know in class whether they know it or not, have antagonized you at that moment, the moment that that fireman stepped into the class. And this hasn't happened to me, it happened to my friend. I would tell you if it happened to me, I have no problem telling you. And at that moment, that girl was antagonized because of her race. At that one moment. When I heard that story, I felt an extreme need to express what happened. Even though I didn't react in any artistic way. But we as artists feel more. We imagine the opposition of everyone in the class against her from all kinds of races, and it reiterates to how the entire world has been pointing to the Middle East. It brings in a whole series of stuff, and the mood was antagonism. The mood was attack. And that's the only mood we ever felt from 9/11. So that's just a tiny little example, and as artists, we feel all of that. And back to one of the discussions we had in our class, and the way people wanted to raise awareness and all that crap. We had a dumb little discussion. Not dumb, but we ended dumbly. And we were talking about how many artists were involved in the raising of awareness of the Japan earthquake / tsunami / nuclear crisis, and how much money had been raised. There's an article about how much money had been raised through DeviantArt only for Japan, just through the art, the way we reacted to it. As artists, we are depressed people. We're not depressed because we like to be sad. We're depressed because there's a lot of crap in the world to be depressed about, because we know how to create mood, and we know what mood is when we see it, and we react to it respectively, so that when we want to create it in our paintings, we know what to do. All that heavy stuff aside, though, all this pain and suffering aside, if you want to paint a simple landscape of mountains over here, and you want to paint, let's say, something that I had painted recently, and you want to paint a mountainside, and you want to create the mood of calm, but you have an object in the front, in the foreground here, you have like a procession of people, and they're traveling. You're creating that mood of grandeur. How do you create the mood of grandeur? Let's go back to our rules. Atmosphere. How do I create atmosphere and mood? Atmosphere means actually painting the air, so fading away this tree, this distant mountain, by a degree of blue, and a degree of purple, and a degree of gray. Places where the sun is shining, we have light, we have yellow, we have redness, we have some level of life, and it's sort of guiding these guys and chasing life, and it's a very wintry scene. There's a lot of snow, and they're trying to escape the coldness of the winter, the negativity of the winter, and move towards the positivity of the sunshine, towards life. And even as an artist, you can strategically place green specks where the snow is melting, and we were seeing some greenness come through in grass. But over here in the shadowed area over here, let's say there's a shadowed area over here, and there's a shadowed area over here. And this entire tree, this entire building here is shadowed. And this entire area is here. We have purple because it is part of the complementary rule to when you have a yellow light source to have a complementary or oppositional coolness in the shadow. So we have purple here. Not only does that make things look realistic, so that's another push towards realism and how realism helps you establish mood and immerse you into it, but it's showing how everything that the sun doesn't touch is cold. And now you have a story, now you have struggle, now you have direction, now you have adventure. And all of this stuff, I figured it out before I even used any color. So do you see how much, this goes to you, Mattia, too. Do you see how much you can achieve by planning your painting? Do you see how much you can achieve just through atmosphere? Just through understanding mood and human emotion? How about scale? Scale is another way to establish emotion. These people are very small. How about if the person just was this big? No, they're not a giant, so just remove these guys. No, this person's just walking through some mud heaps. Or there's a light here, or he's walking through the beach and there's a lot of rock formations. It's a kid. Okay? And he has a little bucket. But look at what scale does. When you make it small people, you make it mountain ranges, detail it respectively, and you have a whole different image. It's not just trying to plan, it's pushing yourself to plan excessively. Because if you plan excessively, if you take a step back, it becomes easier. If you spent a week bench pressing 50 pounds, after a week of bench pressing 50 pounds, 25 pounds seems very light. That's the point here. I'm trying to tell you to overplan your work. Spend just get a work just to plan it. Just get a project just to plan it. Because me planning the grandeur and the perspective and the scale and the color and the theme of the colors and the realism that I want to apply and the palette that I want to use, the palette that is similar or harmonized and very so you know, purple and orange stay in the purple. I mean, purple and blue stay in the purple side of the painting, and blue side, and the orange and all the colors and all the greens and all the beautiful colors stay in this side of the painting. And then you have a sort of focal point, but the focal point are these guys. And so when you have two focal points, you get direction. So the sun is the destination, and these are the destinies. I don't know what to say for them, but these are the sort of units, let's call them, of movement, and they're sort of going in that direction. They're the paladins, they're the heroes, they're the whatever you want to call them. Yes, so you can't plan too much. Well, you can if all you do is plan for a year and you don't end up painting it. But, I mean, look at the classic artists. They spent years and years on their painting. One painting they did for a royal family. I forget who it was. He spent 3 years on it. 3 years of painting. What are you going to do for 3 years? He planned it. He found the perfect objects to place in. He traveled all over Europe to find the perfect vase. I don't know who the artist was. And it was for a royal family in Russia. And all of this pre-planning helps you achieve a successful mood atmosphere. Okay? Mood/atmosphere, I mean. And that's how you get mood and atmosphere. That's it. That's the formula. It's a lot of information. I mean, look at how many layers of explanation I have here. Explain the rules, but the actual inspiration part. Where does this even come from? You want to explain horror? You want to show horror? Go over here and look at this and react to it. If I read a horror book or an adventure book, I don't want to create something that has that same feeling. So I go back to my brain here, and then I remember this process, and I go into my brain and there's a reference piece. Let's say it's a house, or it's a magazine that I read, and I'm feeling something that inspired me. It goes into my brain, but it comes out looking different. And the looking different part, that degree of difference, that degree of separation, is the attachment that came from my brain. And then it led you into how colors apply to establishing mood. Brush technique helps you establish mood. Brush technique meaning transparency. And then how transparency can assist you. I talked about how nature and still nature, even in the storm, even a storm seems calm to me. Even a tsunami going even that far, or an earthquake, seems calm to me because it's nature. But when I look at technology, this is just me personally, my personal biases, and I'm sure I share it with a lot of you. When I look at a cityscape, when I look at a car, when I look at a car engine or a junkyard, I feel disgusted. I feel like an excessive amount of control. I feel what's that term for being scared of closed up spaces? I feel like that. Forgot what the term is. And you have to think about how nature is the positive, like warmth, and the negative, which is technology, is sort of the cold, claustrophobic, yeah. And realism, how realism helps you. It helps you helps you immerse that person. It doesn't really create mood. Realism can be, this can have mood. There was a painting, and I talked to you guys about it before. It was a simple white background and a big red dot in it, and it was a huge canvas. It was just a big canvas, and there was just a red dot in it. Even this has mood. This has mood because, number one, the person who's seeing it is probably like this big. So you have scale and you have all that applying to it. So everything has mood. And what I'm trying to say is that realism, whether you have it or not, there's mood. But realism can help you prove that mood. So realism is proof. Don't forget that realism is proof. You don't always have to have it, but have a degree of it. It's better to have a degree of it. And then we went on to how humans help mood. How humans are mood units in themselves. Sometimes you only need a picture of a person and it changes the world. And if you have trouble believing that, Let me show you something that'll prove it to you for the rest of your life, and you'll never question that theory again. A picture of a person can change the world, and it has. And she's called the Mona Lisa. And her image, just this human picture with barely any background, has created a mood that's stuck with people because her emotion, her barely smiling face. I don't know why everyone says she isn't smiling. She's obviously smiling. But yeah. But do you see how humans create mood? Do you see how humans are units of mood in themselves? You don't just need an inanimate object like a car or a tree to express mood to you. They can express mood to you. But a human will speak to you in a painting. They'll speak more. They actually have more to speak with. They have gestures. They have emotions. They have eyes. Now, eyes are something else. And I've covered eyes, and I've talked about eyes a lot. Eyes are windows to the soul of the painting. Cheesy, but it's the flat-out truth. Noses, lips. How I taught you about the lips and how the lips make or break a painting. How if her lips weren't gently changed into a smile or barely, then we wouldn't have reacted the same way that we have been reacting for the past 500 years. Okay? So does anyone have any questions so far? And then I'll get into critiques. So I'll save this. Okay? Says today a sort of thorough explanation of mood. I know I went to the extreme edges of the world to bring you back proof of mood, but you can't talk about mood, one part of the mood, and not talk about the rest. And I try to keep it a pretty easygoing class most of the time. But most of the time, you guys are asking questions that have very difficult answers, and sometimes you can't handle the truth. But sometimes I push you guys, and I give you a lecture like this, and I really want to push your buttons. I want to push your artistic buttons. I want to push you out of your comfort zone, out of your little bubble, and force your emotions out. Force that little degree of separation between you and your painting, the stuff that attaches itself when you make something. I want to find that. And today I was looking at Noah Bradley's recent video, because I'm subscribed to him on YouTube. And he painted something called The Burdens of Triumph, I believe. And it is the most, at least in the beginning parts of it, it's very, very moving. And you can see the process that he's working with. But the painting itself, I searched it up. Let me just zoom in. Do you see how I told you guys you need references? Never, never let go of your references. It's a very, very beautiful piece. And then I found the actual image. And this is something that went into his brain. His reference went into his brain. This reference right here. And it came out looking like this. He saw something else in that position. Okay? And that's what I mean when something goes in and comes out looking different. And I want you guys to develop this. I want you guys to be painters like this. I don't want you to just draw cute little half cat, half demon, half anime naked bitches all your life. I don't want you to draw that with wearing a mecha suit and their little thong and they act like they can take a bullet. I don't want you guys to only draw that crap. It's excessive, it's everywhere, and it's not necessary. It's all kinds of things. Blizzard Entertainment doesn't just hire people who know how to design naked girls. They hire people who can design wolves. They hire people who can design bear wearing armor. They hire people who can design ogres. So don't act like you can only be hired if you know how to draw a naked woman. No. You can be hired if you can draw anything else as well.